Is doing in our hearts and in our lives. Thank you for this opportunity to come and share some of the songs that we use in worship to on Wednesday nights. Thank you for this time to come and lead you guys in worship. One of the things I told the students on Wednesday nights and hope that they remembered this morning is it's impossible to lead somewhere that you're not going. So it would be impossible for us to lead you in worship if we are not actually worshiping. So our prayer this morning has been that we would lead you in worship based on how we are worshiping. That our heart for the Lord would come out to you. My message this morning, you'll see the title of the message and the theme throughout this whole worship service has been Awake, O Sleeper. Awake, O sleeper. Ephesians 5:14 that was read at the very beginning of the service says, Awake, O sleeper, rise up from the dead, and Christ will shine on you. Awake, O sleeper, rise up from the dead, and Christ will shine on you. I want to come back to that before I go to Mark chapter 4 and 5, because I want you to understand the context of what Paul's saying in the context of the entire worship service today. The context for these verses, I've read these probably 100 times, and just recently the college and young adult ministry has started a study on the book of Ephesians, and I've been going back through Ephesians and rereading just about every week, reading the whole book of Ephesians. But as I got to this verse, it jumped out at me again to awake, O sleeper, rise up from the dead, and Christ will shine on you. For years, I have thought that this was in the context of Paul talking to non-believers, of Paul talking to people who weren't Christians. That Paul's actually quoting the book of Isaiah. Isaiah says, or God speaking through Isaiah, says 4 different times in his book, to awake, O sleeper, rise up, be prepared, stay awake, be amazed at what's going on. And God at that time through Isaiah was talking to the people of Israel. He was talking to his children. Well, Paul, using that same phrase, is not talking to unbelievers. He's actually talking to the church. He's talking to those who have been Christians. He's talking to the saints at Ephesus. I want to read the context of what's going on. At the beginning of chapter 5 of Ephesians, Paul says, Therefore, be imitators of God as beloved children, and walk in love, as Christ loved us and gave himself for us as a fragrant offering and a sacrifice to God. The book of Ephesians is set up in kind of 2 sections. The first 3 chapters, Paul is talking about who God is, what we need to know about God, the attributes of God. The last 3 chapters of Ephesians, Paul's talking about, all right, now with this information, here's what you need to do. He starts chapter 5 with therefore. What I teach the students on Wednesday nights is you got to figure out what the therefore is there for. You remember that? If you see the word therefore, it's tying back to something else. It means that there's something that you may have missed. Pay attention to it. Paul here is saying, therefore, be imitators of God. He's reminding the people of Ephesus, the church at Ephesus, to be imitators of God. And based on that context, Paul says to the church, wake up, O sleepers. Rise up from the dead, and Christ will shine on you. You know, that same message applies to us. To us as the church. To we believers who at times kind of forget. I'll be honest, part of this message, or all of this message, is something that I've been battling with and struggling with now for over a month. There are times in my life, and I go through spells and seasons where the things of God kind of become just part of the job, part of the routine. One of the things I'm absolutely grateful for as one of the pastors here at the church is that you guys provide for my family. You guys help, you guys pay my bills. But you guys pay me to come and read the Bible. You guys pay me to come and study and be prepared to teach. And I am absolutely grateful for that. And there are times where, and this was just recently, since kind of the beginning of the year, I've just kind of gotten stuck in a routine of this is the job. And so my study, my time in the Word has been in preparation to teach, in preparation to do my job. It's really just been me kind of clocking in when I get here, reading the Word, I'm working, I'm preparing, I'm doing what I need to do, and at 4 o'clock I clock out, or whenever it is that I actually get out of here sometimes, and I leave it here. And this is what I do for my job. I study the Bible, I prepare to teach. And there's this verse jumped out at me again that God is saying, listen, you're just going through the motions. You've known me, and I've known God for more than 20 years. I've been a Christian since I was 17. And there are seasons in my life where I am absolutely on fire for what God's doing. And there are seasons in my life where I've fallen back asleep. I think about who God is. I think about who Christ is and what He's done. But it's just kind of the everyday thing. Before becoming a pastor, there were times where I would get up in the morning and I would read and study the Word of God and think, all right, well, I've got that done. Check. Let me go on to the rest of my to-do list. I've done what I was supposed to do today. I've read my Bible and I have prayed. I have done what God has called me to do. The reality is it wasn't really doing anything for me. It wasn't really affecting me. It wasn't changing me. And I can't speak for you. I just know that I go through seasons like this. I pray that you are not in this place right now. But I have a feeling with this many Christians in one place, there's probably somebody who's just going through the motions. Who's just, all right, well, I'm supposed to read the Bible this morning, so I'll read. God, I pray for the people on the prayer list because they need your help. I don't really believe you're going to do anything, but you might surprise me and bring somebody out of the hospital early, or you might surprise me by meeting this need. But most of the time it's just like, all right, Lord bless them. Do what you're going to do. And I hope and pray that's not where you are. But I'll be honest, that's where I have been. And so in the context, and with this as my starting point, I want us to go to the book of Mark, chapter 4. And it's basically the end of Mark chapter 4 all the way through Mark chapter 5. It's a lot of scripture. But I want to read it to you and just make a couple of comments. And I want you to hopefully be awakened, be amazed at who God is. And so our first point, which I'm going to have put up here, says, awake and be amazed at who Jesus really is. That's what Paul was saying to the Ephesians. Wake up, pay attention, come alive, be aware of who's living inside of you. So I want us to look at that real quick. Mark chapter 4, starting in verse 35, says, on that day, when evening had come, he, meaning Jesus, said to them, his disciples, let us go across to the other side. Leaving the crowd, they took him with them in the boat, just as he was. And other boats were with him. And a great windstorm arose, and the waves were breaking into the boat, so that the boat was already filling. But he was asleep in the stern on a cushion. And they woke him up and said, Teacher, don't you care that we are perishing? And he woke up and rebuked the wind and the sea, said, Peace, be still. And the wind stopped, and there was a great calm. He said to them, Why are you so afraid? Have you still no faith? And they were filled with great fear as they said to one another, Who is this that even the wind and the sea obey him? I can't tell you the number of times I've either heard messages on these scriptures or I've read them myself and sitting there thinking, wow, that's pretty cool. I would love to be out in the middle of a boat and out in the middle of a storm and just kind of stand up and say, shh. And the waves stop and the wind stops and it's all pretty again. And now I can, ski on nice, smooth, calm water, things like that. I would love to be able to do that. And oftentimes I just kind of think, wow, that was really neat. Jesus was able to do that. But what does it say the disciples did? It said they were afraid.
They freaked out.
They got scared. They were shocked. This wasn't just an everyday, this happens all the time. It's no big deal. He's just Jesus. He can do that. They were amazed. They were shocked at what happened. I don't know about you, but I've never actually been in a boat and stood up and said, stop, wind, stop, waves, and then listen to me. I haven't done that. I've never seen that. I've never had that actually happen. But here they are sitting in a boat thinking they're going to die. And half of these guys were fishermen. They've been on rough water. And they're panicking for their lives. And they're amazed at what Jesus did. Point A, or sub-point to this first one, is wake up and realize, be amazed at who Jesus is. He is the master over nature. He takes care of it all. He made it. He created it. He spoke it into being. And for him to stand up in the boat and say, hush, for him that wasn't a big deal. But for those guys who were in that boat, that was amazing. That was something they'd never seen before. How many of us at times have just read through that and thought, man, that's cool, but never really let it sink in who Jesus is? Jesus is far above, greater than anything that we think of him. He is the master over nature. Let's keep going. Mark chapter 5, verse 1. It says, and they came to the other side of the sea, to the country of the Gerasenes. And when Jesus had stepped out of the boat, immediately there met him a man out of the tombs who was filled with unclean spirits. He lived among the tombs. No one could bind him anymore, not even with chains. For he had often been bound with shackles and chains, but he broke the chains apart. He broke the shackles to pieces. No one had the strength to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs, on the mountains, he was crying out and cutting himself with stones. And when he saw Jesus from afar, he ran and fell down before him. Crying out with a loud voice, he said, what have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I adjourn you by God, do not torment me. For Jesus was saying to him, come out of the man, you unclean spirit. Jesus asked him, what is your name? He replied, my name is Legion, for we are many. But he begged Jesus earnestly not to send them out into the country. Now there was a great herd of pigs feeding on the hillside, and they begged him, saying, send us into the pigs, let us enter them. So he gave them permission, and the unclean spirits came out and entered the pigs. And the herd, which numbered about 2,000, rushed down the hill, down the bank, into the sea, and drowned. You ever think about that? Jesus just calmed the storm, just calmed the waves. He gets out of the boat, and immediately, right up there on the hill, there's a crazy man, a wild man. A man who, in other descriptions, said that he was unclothed. That he ran around tormenting people. That the path that was there along the water, he would come down and harass people. He would do all sorts of terrible things. And here he is, he'd been bound and chained multiple times, but he'd broken them apart by the power of this unclean spirit that was within him. And as soon as this man, as soon as these demons saw Jesus, they ran to him and fell at his feet, bowed before them, and said, what do you have to do with us, Son of the Most High God? The demons paid respect to Jesus. They came and bowed at his feet. They proclaimed exactly who he was, Son of the Most High God. How many times have I come to the Word? How many times have I come to church? and let the demons give more respect to Jesus than I have? How many times in my life do I come to the Word and think, wow, that's pretty cool. This guy who had been filled with spirits came and bowed before Jesus. All right, well, that's what he should have done. No, the demons were paying honor and respect because they knew who Jesus was. We as Christians should be paying, at the very least, the same respect that the demons are able to do. Jesus is master over evil. Jesus has the power to command them to do whatever. They begged and pleaded, don't send us away, don't send us out. Let us go into the pigs. Let us destroy something, because that's what we're supposed to do. You know, Satan's job, he's got a couple of jobs. It is to steal, kill, and destroy. That's what he does. That's what these demons do. They wanted to kill. So Jesus said, all right, fine, go take care of the pigs. Go do what you want to over there, but this guy's mine. Leave him alone. But be amazed at that. I mean, think about how amazing that is. You've got this man who's literally out of his mind, literally crazy, to the point that he's hurting himself and others. And Jesus simply says, go out, leave him alone. We're going to see what happens to him here. Verse 14 says, now the herdsmen fled. They ran away. They got scared. The guys who were in charge of the pigs, they took off. They'd never seen that happen before. Their whole livelihood just ran into the sea and drowned. But here they are. They're scared. They went and told the city and all the country. And the people came out to see what had happened. And they came to Jesus and saw the demon-possessed man, the one who had had the legion, sitting, clothed, and in his right mind. And they were afraid. Those who had seen it described to them what had happened to the demon-possessed man and the pigs. And they began to beg Jesus, go, depart from our region. As he was getting into the boat, the man who had been possessed came and begged him that he might go with him. But Jesus did not permit him, but he said, go home to your friends and tell them how much the Lord has done for you, how he has had mercy on you. And he went away and began to proclaim in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and everyone marveled. A man who has been set free, and he wants to go with Jesus. He wants to hang out. He wants to keep going. Jesus said, no, I've got another job for you. I need you to go tell others about me. I need you to go and tell them what God has done for you, how much I love you. And he went. And later in the story, if we kept reading in Mark, it actually says that Jesus came again a couple of months later back to the area. And because of what this man with the testimony had been doing, they recognized Jesus. And they brought people to him. And everyone they brought to him was healed simply by touching his cloak. They brought these people. They remembered because of this man's testimony. Because how this man had been set free, they remembered what God had done. And they came and bowed before Jesus. Jesus is the master over all of it. Be amazed by that. Verse 21. When Jesus had crossed again in the boat to the other side, a great crowd gathered around him, and he was beside the sea. Then came one of the rulers from the synagogue, Jairus was his name, and seeing him, he fell at his feet and implored him earnestly, saying, my little daughter is at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her so that she may be made well and live. And he went with him. And this great crowd followed him and surrounded about him. And there was a woman who had discharge of blood for 12 years, who had suffered much under many physicians, and had spent all that she had, but was not better, actually had gotten worse. She'd heard the reports about Jesus and came up behind him in the crowd and touched his garment. And she said to herself, if I simply touch his garment, I will be made well. Immediately the blood dried up. She felt that her body had been healed of her disease. And Jesus, perceiving in himself the power that had gone out from him, immediately turned around to the crowd and said, who touched my garments? His disciples said to him, You see this crowd pressing around you, and yet you're going to say, who touched me? And he looked around to see who had done it. And the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came in fear and trembling and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. And he said to her, daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease. So Jesus is the master over nature. He calmed the sea, he calmed the storm. Jesus is the master over evil. He removed the demons. Jesus, now we see, is the master over disease. Here's a woman who for 12 years had had an issue of blood. And it doesn't go into detail other than said she had an issue of blood. We don't really know what that means. But what we do understand based on Jewish culture is that for 12 years she was not allowed to be clean. She was not allowed to be ceremonially clean, which meant she could not go to worship. She could not enter the temple. She could not talk to a priest. She could not technically touch anyone. If she did, she had to announce that she had touched that person, and that person now, for a week, had to be ceremonially unclean and had to go through a process of washing and rituals in order just to be able to go back to the temple. So for 12 years, she couldn't worship. For 12 years, she couldn't actually spend time with her family because they would have then been unclean and not allowed to go do what they wanted to do. Everywhere she went, she was supposed to announce, I'm unclean, don't touch me. That for 12 years, this is who she was. She wasn't allowed to be in the presence of other people. She had gone to doctors, and she'd spent almost everything she had just to be well. But everything they did made it worse. And here she is, hearing of Jesus, seeing him come, said, I'm not even going to tell him. I'm just going to push my way through the cloud. No, nobody has to know. If I can just touch him. If I can just touch his cloak. If I can just do that, then I'll be fixed. I'll be clean. I'll be right again. I'll be whole and complete. And she does. She weaves her way through the crowd. She kind of pushes and elbows her way in without telling anybody what's happened. And she just grabs his cloak. And immediately, instantly, she's healed. She's set free. Whatever the disease was, she was set free from. Completely healed, completely taken care of. I'm amazed by that. It blows my mind that Jesus, just within his own power, was able to have the side of his shirt kind of touched. And she was set free. Healed completely. Jesus turned around and said, hey, what just happened? Somebody touched me. His disciples are like, yeah, somebody touched you. There's a big crowd around you. How can you not walk and somebody's going to touch you? He said, no, this one was different. Somebody didn't just bump into me. They touched me. I felt power leave. And she came and said she paid him honor and respect. She fell before him because she knew that if she had actually touched him and she was still unclean, that he now would have been unclean. But God doesn't work that way. What used to be unclean now is clean in the power of God. The power of Jesus. The end of the book of John says that the last couple of verses say that if every miracle Jesus had ever performed, everybody Jesus had ever healed, had been written down, completely recorded, that the entire earth couldn't hold the record of it. We just have a little sampling of the things that Jesus did. Jesus healed probably millions of people. We don't know. There's no estimate. John simply said, if everyone was written down in complete detail, the whole earth could not hold the record of what Jesus did in the 3 years of the miracles that he performed. How amazing is that? The whole earth can't hold the record. Jesus is the master over all disease. Does that mean that we're not going to be diseased? No. Does that mean that there's not going to be times when disease takes our body and kills us? Yeah, that's going to happen. Because we live in a fallen world. But Jesus is the master over that. You guys know that for the past 2 plus years, Christy and I have been walking through her cancer. We prayed before we went to the doctor, Lord, let this not be cancer. We prayed after it was diagnosed as cancer, Lord, just dissolve it, take it away, heal it, make it go. Through the surgery, through everything else, God didn't just immediately, like this woman's disease, take it away. But what God did was planted us through this disease into a place where other people who didn't know anything about Him got to hear the message, got to hear the hope that we have, what we could walk through. He was the master over that disease. He planted us exactly where He wanted us. Was it easy? No. Did we cry through it? Yes. Was it hard? Yes. But Jesus is the master over that too. And I'm amazed at the fact that He let us walk through that and has brought us out on the other side. Jesus is more powerful than that. But here's the thing. Not only is He the master over nature, not only is He the master over evil, not only is He the master over disease, we're going to see in just a second that Jesus is the master over death as well. Verse 35. While He was still speaking, there came from the ruler's house someone who said, "Your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further?" But overhearing what they said, Jesus said to the ruler of the synagogue, "Do not fear, only believe." And He allowed no one to follow Him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. And they came to the house of the ruler of the synagogue, and Jesus saw the commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly. And as He entered the house, He said to them, "Why are you making such a commotion and weeping? The child's not dead, just sleeping." And they laughed at Him. But He put them all outside, took the child's father and mother, and those who were with Him, and went to the child. Taking her by the hand, He said to her, "Talitha kumi," which means, "Little girl, arise." Immediately the girl got up and began to walk. She was about 12 years of age, and they were immediately overcome by amazement. He strictly charged them that no one should know of this, and told them to give her something to eat. Here He is, master over nature, master over evil, master over disease. Now we see He's the master over death. Jesus wasn't lying when He said that she wasn't dead, that she was just asleep. But the guy who came and told Jairus that she was dead wasn't lying either. She physically was dead. There was no life in her anymore. She was gone. But Jesus knew beforehand what He had planned to do. That she wasn't dead and gone. She was just resting for a bit. She was dead, but she wasn't gone. And He went in and said, "Come on, it's time to get up. Wake up, arise, get up." And they were amazed at what He did. They were amazed. How many of us are amazed at what Jesus has done for us? I don't have time to tell you my story. Many of you know it. But for me, the things that I've walked through, the things that I've seen, I'm amazed that Jesus would love me. I'm amazed that Jesus still wants to have anything to do with me. I'm amazed that I get to stand before you, that I get to stand before you guys on a regular basis. I'm amazed that they pay attention to what I say sometimes. Sometimes. It amazes me that Jesus would use me. Thing is, He wants to use you too. Because our next point says that awake and be amazed at the reality that that same power lives inside of you. If you're a Christian, if you're born again, if you're a believer, you have the Holy Spirit living inside of you. You have God indwelling you. That's there in you. Every bit of it. It's not a little bitty piece of God. It's not just part of who God is. It's not just a little snippet. It's not like His big toe is now hanging out there. No, it's God is living within you. That power resides in you. The same power that calmed the storm lives in you. The same power that cast those demons out lives in you. The same power that healed the disease that that woman had for more than 12 years lives in you. It's right there. The same power that brought that young girl out of the grave, up from the dead, now lives in you. Because you have the Holy Spirit, you have Jesus, if you are saved. If you have committed your life to Him. And just like the demon-possessed man, we have a command too. We have to go tell people about it. You know, there's times where I'm like, you know, I'm good. I got my little salvation basket. I got it. I'm within me. God's within me. I'm good. I'm good. I'm just waiting to die, Lord. Just whenever you're ready, take me on. Let's go. That's it. I'm good. It's not what He says to do. If the point of salvation was for you to go to heaven, let me word it this way. If the only point of salvation was for you to go to heaven, then as soon as you're saved, you should die. But that's not what happens. Because the only way somebody else is going to know this salvation is for you to go tell them. You can't sit on it. It's not just your gift. It is your gift. It's the free gift from God, which is eternal life. And it is yours. But it's not just for you. It's for you to share. If you want more of it, the more you give away, the more it comes in. You're now a fountain of living water, a flowing spring. Not a pond, not a pool, not a puddle. There's water has to be moving. The Spirit has to be moving. You have to share it so you can be refilled. It's the way the system works. Our job, our role, is to be amazed at who God is. Wake, O sleeper. Talking to us. Wake up. Arise from the dead. Christ will shine on you. That's your job. That's your role. That's what you're supposed to do. Our invitation hymn that we're going to sing in just a second is I Stand Amazed in the Presence. I'll be honest, this song has a whole new meaning to me recently. It has revived who I am. The reality is that I get to stand in the presence of God. So we're going to sing in just a second. Pastor Jack is going to come up front. If you don't understand, if you don't know who this Jesus is, if you're just now beginning to wake up to the fact that Jesus is a real, that He has this power, that He can change your life, please come and talk to Pastor Jack. But if you as a Christian, if you, as Paul was talking to the Ephesians, have been asleep to it, just been sitting on it, hadn't really been paying attention to it, haven't really been doing anything with it, I pray right now that you repent. I pray that you ask for forgiveness. I pray that you change your life. You vow this day to be different. Pastor Jack will be here for that prayer as well. If you'll stand with us, please.